Does that make you a vulture, Hans?
You know, I was going to say, starting off with the word vulture fund, I mean, it's kind of pejorative, isn't it? I would suggest that a vulture fund would be more akin to it's you know, died and you're picking its bones.
I'm going to start again.
But I would say distressed fund looking for a good return. I'd completely agree with what
At what point does a bond die?
A distressed investor who truly understands great value. Katia, why don't you walk us through what's actually happening here? I'm going to turn to you because now I'm just going to push on upset. Yeah.
So basically the bet is everything's going to turn out fine. There's going to be a bumpy road along the way, but it'll all work out. Nobody knows the way it'll work out, but it'll eventually work out. And the thought is, well, the bonds are trading at 50, and as Hans liked to say, that the downside is so little compared to the potential upside. And basically, if a deal is struck now, bonds could go to 60 to 70. A deal is struck again in the fall, it could go even higher. If there's some political change, it could go even higher. And then if eventually everything works out and it's bought back in ECB's quantitative easing program, they could go to par.
Okay, we have been hearing, Eric and I, we moan about it all the time, from distressed investors, that Europe is the place to be. They have been building teams out there for the last 3 years. This is going to be the moment, and the moment hasn't come to fruition yet. Is it now?
Well, it could be, but it's also pick your points. I mean, certainly on the fixed income side, agreed with Katia that the upside versus downside in Greece is pretty attractive. On the other peripherals, the spreads are pretty tight. So, you know, if a deal doesn't go through in Greece, the downside in some of the other peripherals could be pretty considerable. Moreover, there might be a lot of stress on the banks. So therefore, if you've just set up a bunch of money, rushing to go in and competing for deals on, let's say, non-performing loan portfolios might be tricky. So you might have to wait for some resolution around Greece before you start deploying the capital.
For you to win, does Tsipras have to win?
Well, I'm actually relatively agnostic. I think, you know, the issue on Greek government bonds is that they won't be restructured. This is what they're talking about now is the official sector debt.
Right. The stuff that you own is private sector debt.
It's private sector debt. It's UK jurisdiction. It's only 15% of the total debt stock. They're not going to restructure this.
All of those hedge funds who raised money to buy assets from banks in Europe, that really didn't happen. So is that money that was allocated to Europe, is that now going to this trade?
I'm not sure. I mean, you might know better than I do, but I know that these are the guys that are involved in the big three kind of sovereign distress scenarios, so Argentina, Puerto Rico, and Greece. But it seems that fewer of them are involved in Greece than they are in the other two.
And who is it?
So we know of Knighthead, Perry, and Monarch are involved, and I've heard of some other ones too. But basically, everyone's kind of saying there are fewer guys involved in this one. It's very hard to trade. It's not very liquid. One person mentioned it could be there's like some mammoth player out there who's just holding on to everything and not really trading. Yeah, so it's hard to build a position.
If the issue is if going back to Greece for a second, if the issue is the official sector debt, why is the private sector debt trading at such a steep discount? Well,
I think there's a bit of a lack of understanding. I think people read the headline of
that's where the asymmetry comes in.
Debt restructuring. Oh my gosh, I got to worry about my GGBs. But I think it's also just a shock. I mean, there's no question that if a deal doesn't go through, there might be pressure on the banking system. People may be concerned that, you know, at the very least, you're going to get mark-to-market loss on the GGBs. But going back to what Katia was saying, it's amazing how little liquidity there is in the GGB market, which actually points to why you could make such a good return very quickly. There is money on the sideline. It's interesting. We've been seeing bids coming through different brokers. Somebody's looking not just to, you know, to build a position, but to add to some large positions to put this trade on. And it could be the overflow money that's coming from these European, you know, recovery funds. So the chance of a real upward, you know, move, and a quick one, is pretty high if a deal is announced.
Katia, how is this situation different from Argentina?
It's different in a lot of... First of all, Argentine bonds are trading above par now. So those guys have made a killing, basically just holding their position. But the similarity here is the political aspect. Everything is riding on politicians putting their egos aside and getting a deal done. Argentina, that hasn't happened, but these guys have still made a ton of money, which is interesting. And as I was talking with Hans earlier, it's kind of like the conviction trade is so strong that even a bad headline doesn't move the market in Argentina because they're like, well, we can't lose this money. We've built such a strong position that this can't go wrong for us.
There's a basic difference also. In Argentina, you're not worried about the debt to GDP number. The entire economy is unlevered, and actually the government's pretty unlevered. So it's really just politics. I mean, obviously, fixing the litigation problem, you don't quite know what the number is, but the what's going to change this is the election. Christina Fernandez de Kirchner going out of power, and either, at this point it looks like it's going to be Macri or Scioli coming in. No question either one of those is going to solve this, and therefore you see the trigger to change things. Greece, it's a little trickier. There's too much debt, but then again, it is a political solution to that problem too.